SupermassiveGames are a British video game developer studio who are best known for their choose-your-own-story horror narrative games. Their breakout title was Until Dawn in 2015, which was pretty much what would happen if you turned the slasher movies of the 80s into a video game, which ended up doing really well. With the help of Sony for the budget of Until Dawn, not only did they make an interesting script to captivate audiences, they also provided high quality household names as the actors, and via their motion capture technology, brought those actors to life within the game itself. Off of that success, they did an anthology series that rounded out Season 1 after an installment of 4 games, and also did the Quarry, which almost felt like it aimed to be the spiritual successor or sequel to Until Dawn. Here today I'll be doing my personal ranking of all of these games from worst to best. Please note these are just opinions, and the best part is you can agree or disagree with my decisions however you please. I'm very interested in how our thoughts compare, so please feel free to drop your personal list in the comments section below. Warning, there will be minor spoilers about each game within this ranking to ensure that I can fully articulate how and why I ranked them where I did. If you wish to avoid spoilers, I'd recommend playing the games first and then coming back once you've done. Final thought, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel as it really helps me out. Alright, let's go. The first installment of the Anthology series, without sounding harsh, was a step down from what Until Dawn did 4 years prior. But despite this, it was still a piece of art that did what it set out to achieve. A choose-your-own-story narrative that had every decision you make impact something either in the current situation or further down the line. Initially, the story is exciting and the characters, even though not the most likeable cast available, did provide for an interesting experience with wonder and mystery to uncover. Sadly, the moment we step on the ship, the momentum just falls on its face. The plot twist, if you can even call it that, is very easy to figure out, and I figured it out really early on, as did many of my friends. This game does its best to provide tension and scares, but the scares end up being very cheap, and the writing doesn't do a good job to keep you really invested in what will happen. The idea of the Manchurian Gold is great, but it wasn't executed in a good enough way for it to be a plot twist. The deaths that can take place are somewhat interesting, and the way the gas affects each individual is cool, but it doesn't do enough to make it super memorable, or one that you'd recommend others to play. It's a very short game that could have benefited from much more fleshed out characters, and a better way to articulate the twist, but as a debut for the Anthology, it clearly showed signs of something good to potentially come. Controversial pick of the bunch is that for me, the Quarry is next on my list. I try to look at these games on a case-by-case basis, but sometimes it is hard to not draw comparisons to ones you've played prior. To sing its praises, the Quarry to me is a very beautiful game graphically, and does provide a good varied cast of characters. Big shout out to Brenda's song by the way. However, its story for me is too much of an Until Dawn clone for my liking. Now, I know the enemies at play are different between the two, as is the environment and the plot twists, but for me, it tried very hard to replicate the lightning in a bottle element of Until Dawn, and this affected its ability to stand out and be its own thing. Werewolves are traditional horror and gothic villains, which isn't a bad thing, but I do feel unique and more uncommon supernatural entities would have done wonders for this game. Once we know werewolves are at play, for me it just didn't seem scary, as it's just a chase of, predator versus prey, which happens anywhere in the wilderness if you take a wrong step at night. The ending for me was also very poor, even if you get the quote-unquote good ending, and so that also soured my experience and view on it as a whole. The story of Silas was decent, but left me being like, okay, instead of truly being invested to save him and those who were infected due to his actions. For those who hadn't played Until Dawn before this, I can see clearly why you'd love the Quarry and potentially rank it as your favourite, but for me, it left more to be wanted in terms of uniqueness and the excitement. Following that, we have House of Ashes, the third installment of the Anthology Season 1. I really liked in this game how, despite the supernatural elements at play, it felt like a genuinely real experience. The setting, characters, interactions, and the conversations felt genuine instead of just a video game script, which I respected highly. I feel they captured the idea of the military well here, and I love the dynamic between how we have to learn alongside the cast of Americans that in order to survive this troubled and cursed temple, we're gonna have to work alongside our enemies and trust one another. Now, I'm not someone who really enjoys stuff regarding the military, navy, or any aspect of war, but I can say the way this was handled was not only done with care to be true to the source material at hand, but also wasn't afraid to be brutally honest too. Jason is a prime example of this, and his character at the beginning is harsh, cruel, heartless, and to be honest, he's quite racist. These characteristics made him seem real, and also made him unlikable, but that also gave him the best redemption arc. People can change if they are open to learn and evolve, and I like this evolution narrative for Jason. There were lots of layers to House of Ashes, and despite the highs and lows being great, I just feel like there was something missing for me. The underground section opening up as this almost alien-like hideout was really neat, but I wasn't really bothered about how things panned out in the end, which is kind of a shame. I always aim to try and keep everyone alive on a first playthrough, as it's typically difficult to do so, but minus Selim, there wasn't much to these characters that made me want to save them. As I stated previously, maybe my disconnect for anything military-wise made this one not work in the way that it should have, but regardless, I think it's a well-rounded game to stand strong at the middle of this list. Another game to maybe cause an upset is that I continue onward with little hope in third place. Let's point out the elephant in the room. The ending to this game is disappointing and at times can be considered lazy writing. No matter how good the source material and heart of a script is, when you're being hit with a "but it was all just a dream" or "all in their head," it makes you feel as a viewer cheated. But despite this, I genuinely had so much fun and enjoyment from this second entry to the Dark Pictures series. Seeing how my decisions in the prologue influenced later parts of the game was fun, and I liked the supernatural elements that seemed to be at play here. Switching between eras was fun for me, and uncovering the story regarding Mary kept me invested from beginning to end. Even though this ending did disappoint me, I still don't believe it ruined the game personally. The human mind is such a complex thing, especially when exposed to trauma, so I enjoyed how they tried to show what Andrew was feeling, how he was hurting, and thus how it impacted his whole life since this tragic event way back in his younger years. Mental health is hard to portray in media, well, at least in good capacity, so I think even though it could have been written better for the ending to have felt, more worthwhile and not lazy, I do respect and appreciate how the ending almost helps you understand Andrew to a whole new element. A lot of people don't like it, understandably so, as your decisions genuinely end up not mattering besides maybe a slight difference of ending cutscene. But for me, the history aspect of this game touches on mental health subjects and links between the past were enough for me to give Little Hope the bronze medal on this list. And now the finale of the Dark Pictures Anthology Season 1 takes the silver medal in the race. The Devil in Me is the most polished and visually pleasing of all the Anthology games on offer thus far, as well as creating a good narrative by remixing such a well-known historical serial killer, this being H.H. Holmes, into a modern tale. I'm one of those people who are fascinated by crime documentaries and learning all about how the human mind works, so this game felt built from the ground up specifically for me. I know some people criticise it for us never seeing Dumet's face, and the ending being a kind of "how is that possible" vibe, but to me that played into how both crime documentaries and horror movies are, so for me, it kinda worked and I give it a pass. I was worried that by being set in a hotel it would limit how much could be done and thus it would feel repetitive and badly claustrophobic, but due to the moving walls causing the structures to constantly keep changing, there was always a new room to explore, which was wonderful. On top of this, I really loved the almost jigsaw-like inspired traps at play that were scattered across the hotel's many floors and rooms, as well as the animatronic mannequin barbershop quartet. That was a wonderful surprise. A lot of these decisions in this game for me felt like they had more actual consequences if you chose wrong, and so made this feel like a true horror movie vibe. One standout example was whether you gave the screwdriver to Kate, or kept it for yourself when playing as Jamie. A prior apparition shows us a death scene of Jamie, which I think acts as a good way to add tension when the screwdriver comes up in conversation. Will keeping it prevent that fate from coming true, or is the reverse the better option? I like these kinds of decisions very much. The hotel feeling like an alive entity, similar to the likes of the Overlook Hotel from The Shining, was great, and the mystery of Dumet was interesting enough that it overshadowed the somewhat bland cast of characters who didn't really bring enough to complement the setting. The best character for me was Connie the dog, and honestly, if you played this game and didn't save Connie, you are evil. I'ma just say that with my whole chest. Like, if you're gonna do anything, just save Connie, man. Please. Overall for me, it's the best of the anthology due to how well it creates an idea and sticks to it without becoming stale, repetitive, or boring. There's things that could have been improved for sure, the main one for me being the characters and how they don't do enough to make us care as much as we should. But that aside, I really enjoyed this one and hope this is good momentum for what Season 2 of the anthology will become. Finally, the gold medal and first placed on my list is of course the one that started it all, Until Dawn. For reference, as of making this list, I have only played the 2015 version of Until Dawn and have yet to play the remaster that launched in 2024. The reason this is my favourite game is just because it truly was something new and a lightning in a bottle moment that only comes along every so often in the gaming world. On paper, it doesn't sound anything special, but to experience it firsthand was such a fun and freeing thing to enjoy. The cast of characters are my favourite as they feel realistic but also fit the parody aspect of classic slasher horror movies. They have the campness of Scream without it seeming out of place or like a mockery, and the dynamic between everyone makes sense, and I like how every player can view each character differently. Mike and Emily start off as unlikable, but evolve slowly over their experiences to, in my opinion, seek brilliant redemption arcs, and become well liked. Sam is obviously the true definition of what a final girl should be in a horror film. She's kind, well-rounded, smart, and obviously very, very beautiful. She's a grounding point for the group to branch off from, and Hayden Panettiere does a great job with nailing this character to a T. I'd like to think that her iconic performance in Scream 4 helped solidify how crucial it would be to lock her down for this project as Sam. She's a great actress at portraying a range of emotions, and yeah, to me, she's Sam. That's it. The story is also brilliantly executed, and it hits the right pacing beats to keep things interesting. For example, the switch of perspectives and areas is done so perfectly well. Alongside this, another beautiful thing about playing this for the first time is how it makes you think that the plot twist is the reveal of this alleged psycho stalker of the mountains, causing chaos and destruction. But it's actually our friend Josh. But oh no, there's bigger trouble than him at play here. We go from somewhat harmless but psychological pranks to these Wendigos tracking us down one by one. One which we find out is Josh's deceased sister, Hannah. Throughout the story, there's various sprinklings of lore delivered via journals, medical records, therapy sessions with Dr. Hill, and Jack Fiddler explains the history of the mountain. Combining all this together really helps the story feel fleshed out, and it captivates you and makes you want to keep playing. As a player, you are rewarded for not only paying attention to these crumbs of lore, but by also exploring as much as possible across the various areas. This is finding totems, notes, and whatever else you can find. Certain journal entries can help you make life-saving decisions later on, or to learn where you've previously gone wrong. My favourite example is reading how Wendigos can mimic human voices in order to trap future victims. And later on, Ashley can hear Jessica supposedly yelling for help in the mines. But if you paid attention and ignore it, you'll soon realise that was never Jessica saying such things. She herself says as much in the post-credits cutscene. Honestly, I could talk highly about this game for hours on end if you'd let me keep going, but to put it bluntly, it is one of the best horror narrative video games you'll ever get the pleasure to play, and its replayability is ever present with how many endings and decisions can be made, which, for me, great value for money and an enjoyable experience. What is not to like? And listen, to think that after experiencing all of this story, all of this trauma, we finish off at the lodge where this all began. It really rounds out and just shows us how good this game is. And we did it. We lasted until dawn. The credits roll as the survivors are interviewed, and you really see how much the events of the night has impacted them, all on different levels, both physically and mentally. It not only rounds out the story well, but it makes your efforts feel worth something, which is what I think everyone wants when they play a video game. Like, we lived through this nightmare alongside them, so it's really hard to not feel some level of attachment to most, if not all of them, when the game concludes. Overall for me, there isn't much criticism I can give Until Dawn, as it felt very well done and well rounded. Is it perfect? No. But for what it aims to do, I feel it's as close as someone can get to reaching that level. Therefore, I had no choice but to make it my winner. So if you've made it to this point, I really appreciate you watching the entire video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see future videos from me. I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.